Okay, I guess we can go ahead and begin. Good evening, Chatham Cougars, Dr. Walker, Mrs. Duranda, Mr. Henderson, and counselors. I'm Jennifer Jordan, the interim college and career counselor here at Chatham High School. And on behalf of the entire administration and counseling staff, I want to welcome you to our annual college funding night. Tonight, we will be hearing from our guest speaker, Ms. Kristen Isaacson, Associate Director of Financial Aid at Monmouth University. She will discuss the college funding process, financial aid, merit-based awards, and more. And tonight, we will learn more about the new 2024-2025 FAFSA, which is scheduled to be released in December. Before I turn the evening over to Ms. Isaacson, I would just like to go over a few housekeeping items. This evening's presentation is being recorded for future viewing purposes, and it will be available on our website under the College Funding button, which is located on the College and Career Planning page. We ask that you please keep your microphones muted throughout this evening's presentation. And lastly, we encourage any questions that you may have to please enter them into the chat, as we will be monitoring them throughout the evening and taking time to answer them. Without further ado, let us now welcome Ms. Kristen Isaacson, Director of Financial Aid from Monmouth University.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you to all of you who are watching this evening. And Jennifer, you did give me a little bit of a promotion. I am Associate Director of Financial Aid, not Director, so I do want to just make that clear so so my boss doesn't get upset about that. But yes, we are going to talk about the financial aid process. I am going to spend a good amount of time on the FAFSA itself for 24-25, because you will see that there are changes. But yes, I will talk about sources of aid, types of aid, and certainly give you tips as we go throughout the presentation. So we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so as you can see here, the federal financial aid process, so it's not just the FAFSA itself, is undergoing an overhaul for starting with the 24-25 academic year. This is the biggest overhaul that they've done basically since the FAFSA has existed. So there's changes to the FAFSA itself, changes to the output of the FAFSA, and also changes to how certain things are calculated. So what I have for you so far in this presentation and the screenshots, it still is subject to change. Did get the information from the Department of Ed, and even on their presentations, they still say it's subject to change. Some of the screenshots may still be drafts, and so when you do go into your actual FAFSA, it may look different. So just putting that out there so that if something does look different from what you see tonight, that's why. So we can move on to the next slide. And as Ms. Jordan said, the FAFSA will be available in December. Unfortunately, we do not have a specific date yet. Been checking it every single day for an announcement, but we don't know yet. By law, it does have to be out by the end of December, but again, we don't have a specific date. And I'm sure that will be announced everywhere when it is available. I would recommend, if you're not already, to follow the social media for the federal student aid. You would get all the up-to-the-minute updates by doing that. Now, December, whatever day they decide in December is the day that it's available. That's the first day that you can file it. It's not the last, it's the opening day. As far as what your deadline is, that's something that you have to check with the individual colleges and universities that your student is interested or has already applied to. They will establish deadlines for any financial aid applications that are required. So when you review all those deadlines, whatever is the earliest one, that's your deadline. So if your student is applying to 10 different schools, check with their financial aid offices for the FAFSA deadline. Whatever you find is the earliest one, that's your deadline. Okay, we can move on. So The free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, is the application for all types of federal aid. Also for New Jersey residents, it does go to the state of New Jersey to determine state aid eligibility. And it's the form that all schools are going to ask you for at a minimum. There may be more, and we'll talk about that a little bit down the road, but just know that basically every school is going to ask you to complete this, and there may be more in addition. And so to get a little more information about federal student aid and the process, you'll want to take a look at the website studentaid.gov. This is your one-stop website for all things related to federal aid. If you get to studentaid.gov, you can complete the FAFSA. You can read about all of the aid programs. If you or your student decide to borrow federal loans, you'll be completing electronic paperwork for those loan programs through this website. Once you graduate with your loans, there's information in here to help you manage those when you go into repayment. So lots of information all in this one website. Also understand that with the FAFSA, you're going to need to apply each year for each student that you will have in college. So this is not a family form, and it's not a one and done form. It's each year for each student that you will have in college. You'll also be using income from 2 years prior. So that means for 24-25, you're going to be using 2022 income information. So realize that that is correct. It always is what we call prior year, or income from 2 years prior. If you would like to get an early read, since the FAFSA is not available yet, on your eligibility, you can use what's called the Federal Student Aid Estimator. I did put the link on the slide. Also, if you manage to get yourself to studentaid.gov and go under the menu for the FAFSA, you'll also be able to access it from there. This is not completing an actual FAFSA. It's just a way for you to enter certain information for it to give you an estimate on the eligibility. But at this point, it's what's available. So I recommend, if you're looking to get, some early information, to go ahead and use the Federal Student Aid Estimator. Okay, we can move on to the next one. In order to access and complete the FAFSA, both students and parents need something called a studentaid.gov account. You may also see it referred to as an FSA ID, which is a Federal Student Aid ID. What this is a username and password that you create that gives you the access into the FAFSA application, allows you to sign off on it, and then also down the road for any federal student loans, you'd be using that to log into the site, sign off on loan documents and things like that. So it is basically your access point. In order to set up a studentaid.gov account, you would need your social security number. Please double and triple check it for accuracy, a mobile phone number and/or an email address. And the mobile phone number and email address that you use need to be specific to the person applying for the account. So parents, that means that you can't set up your account with your phone number and then try to set up your student's account with that same phone number. The system knows that that's trying to be used twice, and it won't let you move forward. So everything needs to belong to the specific person applying for that student aid account. And my last bullet there says that all contributors to the FAFSA need an account. So we have a little bit of a vocabulary change here, so that any person whose information is going on the FAFSA is now considered a contributor. Student can be a contributor, parent can be a contributor, spouse, student spouse, parent spouse, all can be considered contributors. So that anyone who is considered a contributor to the FAFSA will need an account. For those parents who already have an FSA ID because you've completed this FAFSA for an older child, you don't need a new one. You can continue to use what you already have and just set up the new one for now this next student that's attending college. And yes, I think we can move on to the next one. I do want to make you aware of some of the general eligibility requirements to complete the FAFSA. So these are all student requirements. So the student does need to ultimately earn a high school diploma or its equivalent before you can file the FAFSA, but before we can award them and pay any financial aid, they would have to have earned a high school diploma or its equivalent. There is a place on the FAFSA to do so. They'll be able to mark off high school diploma and then information, the name of the school that they attended. In order for a student to be awarded financial aid, they do need to be accepted for enrollment in an eligible program at a college or university. Students must be U.S. citizens or eligible non-citizens and also have a valid Social Security number. Okay, we can move on. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of the FAFSA form itself, I do want to give you a little bit more information about some terms that you'll hear throughout the financial aid process. One of those terms is cost of attendance. And what is cost of attendance? Well, basically, it's the overall cost to attend an institution for the school year. And as my slide shows you, it includes things like tuition and fees, housing and food. But also within the cost of attendance, we have things like books and course materials, supplies, transportation, miscellaneous expenses like clothing and entertainment and toothpaste and shampoo and things that you might need to live. So when you see in whether you're reading about financial aid or when you're ultimately getting financial aid offers, you may see that term cost of attendance. So always remember that the cost of attendance is greater than just tuition fees, room and meals, housing and food. It includes those other costs that aren't necessarily billed by a college or university, but you should be prepared for. You know, everybody needs books, they need supplies. You need to be able to get to and from the campus that you've decided to attend. So transportation can mean different things for different people. Are you within driving distance? Do you need to take a plane every time you want to come home? So those are considerations as far as transportation is concerned. And then obviously more of the miscellaneous things like living expenses. Okay, we can go on to the next one. When we complete the FAFSA, all the data that you're providing is going to give us an output number. That is now called the Student Aid Index, or SAI. It's still a number, and we're using that number to determine the student's eligibility for need-based financial aid. That means need-based means aid based on financial information. It's again calculated using the information that the student and the required contributors provide on the FAFSA form. It is replacing what we called the expected family contribution, or EFC. That was the name of the output number through this current school year. And then starting with 24-25, it will be called the Student Aid Index, or SAI. And one change with the SAI is that it can actually go into negative numbers. So previously, the SAI, with the EFC, 0 was the lowest it could be. Now it goes down to a maximum of negative 1,500. Please note that, actually, I will tell you the note on the next slide, but just letting you know that there is a change there for some families that might have seen, you know, and to wonder why there's like a negative, that's why it can go into negative numbers. So I mentioned need-based aid. So I do want to let you know how you can determine whether your student has financial need. So we take the cost of attendance that I talked about, that overall cost to attend the institution for the school year. We're going to subtract from that student aid index, so the number that we get from all the data that you put on the FAFSA, and that equals the student's financial need. The note that I want to give you is that if you do have a negative SAI, that will be converted to a 0 for this equation, so that we're not able to award a student over that cost of attendance figure. So just want to let everyone make sure everyone's aware of that. So that's our equation to determine whether or not a student has financial need, and then if they do, how much it is to then determine how much need-based aid they're potentially eligible for. Okay, we can move on to the next one. I strongly encourage everyone to complete their FAFSA online. I'm encouraging people to do that for years, and I continue to encourage that with the changes that are coming up for 24-25. I know that the link on the bottom of the slide is a little long, so if you just get yourself to studentaid.gov, there's a menu. that says FAFSA form. And if you drop down there, you can click complete the FAFSA form. It'll take you right to the page to get started. And I remembered there was one other thing I wanted to tell you all. So if when we're done tonight and you're so excited and you feel you need to do something related to financial aid, you just can't wait until December. If you don't have a student aid account, studentaid.gov account, you can do that ahead of time. And federal student aid is encouraging that because there are some confirmation checks that it does. It will check with the Social Security Administration to confirm that the number you list is indeed your Social Security number. And it takes a little bit of time for all of that to happen. So they do recommend that you have that ahead of time so that you're ready to go once the FAFSA opens. If you don't do it ahead of time, don't worry, you can still get things completed, but it is something that can be done ahead of time. And I do recommend if you are doing it ahead of time, please make sure you're recording all of the information. What are the usernames? I know you're not supposed to write passwords down, but I think in this case, it's a situation where you have to. And keeping student, okay, username, password, the phone number we use, security question answers, and things like that. And then keep that separate. This is parent, this is mom, this is dad, this is whoever, so that this information doesn't get mixed up because that can be a problem if you're trying to log in as the wrong person. That will create difficulties in completing the application. All righty, we can move on to the next slide. So there's a little bit of a new look and a new color palette to the FAFSA online. So for those of you who've maybe done this before, you should notice a little bit of a change. But when you log in and get started, you're going to select whether you're the student or the parent. And it says there, I am starting the FAFSA form as A, and then you click what your role is. And then parents, you can log in as the parent and you can complete the student portion, but the student will still have to log in and provide what we call consent. I will tell you more about that in a moment, and then electronically sign the form. So it won't be finished. Parents, if you try to do it all, the student will still need to go in there and complete a portion of it. We can go on to the next one. So providing consent. So all the contributors to the FAFSA have to provide their consent. Consent to what? To having their tax data electronically transferred from the IRS into the FAFSA. For those of you that have done this before, you know we have something called the IRS data retrieval tool. And that was where you opted in, you provided information, identifying information to the IRS, said whether you wanted to transfer the data, and it transferred. This is a little bit different. This is going to streamline the process. And as long as all the contributors provide consent, that's key. Everybody on the FAFSA has to provide consent. If not, if someone doesn't, then the student will be ineligible for federal student aid. It will not calculate that student aid index. But when you do, it's going to be this electronic data exchange, and it's going to pull all the information it needs from the IRS right into the FAFSA. I have a little bit more on that on the next slide. So this is actually called the Future Act Direct Data Exchange. So the Future Act is the law that established this, and then it's the Direct Data Exchange. So not only do we have a whole bunch of new terminology, we have all new acronyms to learn as well in this process. So through the DDX, the tax information, like I said, is going directly into the FAFSA from the IRS. The IRS transfers the information. They will populate the FAFSA income question for most tax filers. What's key here is you will not see any of this. This is all happening behind the scenes. So once you provide the consent, it's going to pull that information from the IRS and attach it to that FAFSA, and you won't see the questions. You won't see the questions. You won't see the answers. It's just going to be there. So I do like to make you aware of that. So you're like, well, wait, where are all the income questions? You're going to have very minimal, maybe 2 to 3 additional income questions to answer that are related to your tax return after that transfer actually happens. So hopefully this will be an even more streamlined process for the income that's required on the FAFSA. We can go to the next slide. Now, another item that is new on the FAFSA is that students who do start their application, that is the way that this is kind of intended, is that the student initiates the process. And as they complete their portion, they'll also be asked to invite the parents to complete their portion of the application. The student will have to enter a parent email, and the parent receives the email, or the email is sent in real time to the parent, notifying them that, hey, your student has requested that you go in and complete their FAFSA. You can be doing this both at the same time. You both can be in the application at the same time. Student will see their portion, parent will see their portion. But just know that this is a new part of the process. We can move on. Want to go over a little bit related to marital status for parents, because this is a part of the FAFSA that does trip up families sometimes. So want to give you some information about this so we're sure who needs to complete the FAFSA. So you'll be presented, parents, when you're in your portion, you'll be presented with a list of potential marital statuses, and they've even broken out everything. So it's one single status that you can click on. Remember, when you're reporting the marital status, it's the marital status as of the day the FAFSA is completed, not 2 years prior like the income. So as of the day you complete this, what is the marital status? Now, we also have a change related to parents that are divorced or separated. So the way that things are going to be working starting in 24-25 and going forward, when the parents are divorced or separated, the parent that will go on the FAFSA is the parent who provided the greater portion of the student's total support. So that is something you as parents will have to determine. What is the student's total support? Who's paying what? And whose is the greater? If you determine that you pay equally for everything, 50-50 split for everything, every cost that the student has, then you'll be reporting the parent with the greater income or assets. So unfortunately, right now they have that "or" in there. We have a Federal Association for Financial Aid people. They are trying to get an answer from the federal government. Which is it? Are we doing and? Is it or? How do we determine which parent then to pick if one has greater income and one has greater assets? So stay tuned for that, especially for those that are divorced, separated. And there should also be help within the FAFSA itself if you're struggling with how to answer any question that's on it. Now, the other thing too, oh wait, one thing, can you go back? I'm so sorry. I also want to point out too, since we are also working with the marital status as of the day the FAFSA is completed, if that divorced parent is the parent that provides more support to the student and that parent is actually remarried, please note that the marital status then is remarried. You'll have that as a choice, and the step parent's income information does need to go on the FAFSA. So you can't just be thinking of the legal parents and the marital status. It's a lot of if, then. So again, if it's divorced or separated, we're first looking at for the parent that provides the greater portion of the student's support, then what is then the current marital status of that parent? Are they married to somebody else? Need to report that step parent as well. I hope that makes sense. Okay, we can move forward. You'll also be asked to report family size on the FAFSA. Formerly, this was called household size. Now it's being called family size. And what will happen is, because we have this data transfer with the IRS, it's going to pull in the number of not exemptions anymore. I know they're not called that anymore on the tax return. Number of people you have on the tax return. And it's going to say, okay, is your family size still the same as it was on the 2022 tax return? So a good idea to have that return out when you do this. And if yes, fine, you'll move forward with the rest of the application. If not, you'll be offered the opportunity to do a manual update on the household size, and it will walk you through who can be counted in that family size. Also, this is the big one that everyone's been talking about, number in college. So you will still report the number of students in the family size who are in college on the FAFSA. However, the fact that there are multiple children in college will no longer be part of the student aid index calculation. Why is it still need to be reported then if it's not being used to help determine the aid eligibility? Well, because the law says it has to be in there, so that's why we have to keep it in there. But then also, there may still be states and or colleges or universities that want that information as well. It's not going to be everybody, but there may also be some organizations that do have access to the FAFSA that will want to know if there's more than one in college. Okay, we can move on. And then also want to point out some information related to assets, because there's been some changes to this section of the FAFSA as well. So if any of you out there receive child support, you will now find that where to report it under the assets. It's no longer untaxed income, it is an asset. You're going to report the child support that you received during the last full calendar year. So that means if you complete the FAFSA in December, when it opens, then you would be reporting the child support you received in 2022, because that would still be the last full calendar year. If you do it in January or after, then you're reporting 2023. This is how we're doing this going forward. You may also be asked about your cash savings and checking accounts, like marital status. Cash savings and checking, as well as the net worth of investments in the business and farm, are all as of the day you complete the FAFSA. With investments, there are a couple of exclusions. I wrote them there on the slide. Investments exclude the home that the student lives in, the value of any life insurance, and also what you have saved in retirement accounts. Those are the three exceptions. Basically, everything else that you might have is an investment. If you own another home, whether you rent it out, it's a vacation property, you have land somewhere, all of that is reported. Do you own stocks outside of your retirement fund? Those need to be reported. Bonds, money market accounts, mutual funds, like I said, basically anything else that you have that's an investment needs to be reported. Along those lines, the college savings plans also do need to be reported. And they are reported as an asset on the parent side of the FAFSA. And we're looking at plans that are owned. So we got to look at ownership, owned by the student or the parent. Doesn't matter for plans owned by grandparents or other family members. If the ownership is the student or the parent, we're reporting it on the FAFSA and we're reporting it as a parent asset. Any other asset that the student has does get reported on the student side of the FAFSA. They make this exception for this one item. And the good news is, this is the good change, I would hope most people would think, you're reporting the amount only for the student, the amount that's saved up for the student completing this FAFSA. Prior to this, if you had multiple children, you had to report the total that you had saved for all of the kids. So now it's just for the student you're completing this FAFSA for. So that should hopefully be helpful to some families. And then we also have net worth of business and investment farm. There's a change here. There was an exception for small business owners. That is gone. There was an exception for farms that you owned but didn't live on. That's gone as well. So basically, if you have a business or farm, you're looking to report the net worth of land, buildings, machinery, equipment, inventory, whatever it may be related to that particular business or farm. Okay, so if you make it through all of that in the FAFSA, you'll have a spot for both on the student side of things and then on the parent side of things to sign and complete. This is a separate step from that providing the consent. The consent, you're really providing that to have the tax data transferred over. When you're signing off on the FAFSA, you're signing off on the fact that this is true information to the best of my ability. And I realize if I report things incorrectly, the penalties, that I can have for that. So that is what you're doing here. So each contributor will sign off and submit. Before you get to this part, there will be a section to list the colleges that you want to receive this information. For those students applying to numerous institutions, they have upped the number of colleges you can put on the FAFSA to 20. Previously it was 10, so now you can put up to 20 on the application. So hopefully that will take care of just about everybody with the number of colleges that they're applying to. You have to list at least one, and then you can list a maximum of 20. Okay, we can go. Once you get to a page that tells you congratulations on it, then you know you've completed your portion. So that's your completion confirmation. And then there's also now a way to be able to go in and track and manage the application as well. So just always like to point out that you need to get to that congratulations part to know that you're actually complete. Okay, so, excuse me. You've completed your FAFSA. What happens after that? So you get something called a FAFSA submission summary. For those that have filed before, this is formerly known as the student aid report, but now it's the FAFSA submission summary. And you should get it electronically if you provide email address. If you don't, they're going to mail it to you. But even if you're looking at it online, you also have ways to print out if you feel you need to. When you go to review your FAFSA submission summary, there's going to be some estimated eligibility. So an overview that's going to include an estimated student aid index along with the federal aid eligibility, again, estimated. There's going to be a place to review all your FAFSA form answers. Double check it. You should check it before you submit it, which you can do, but then also make sure you're checking it at this point in time too, so that if you do find that something's incorrect, you can start a correction and fix it early on in the process. You'll have a section that will list all the schools that you put on it and some information about them, and then next steps that are available. And then like I have on here, you can print a copy for your records. So congratulations, you got through the FAFSA. Now, you may have to do more. And some of your schools may be asking for what's called a CSS profile. Some of you may have even already started this. It's a form put out by the College Board. It's used by a few hundred schools across the country, schools that have a significant amount of institutional funds to spend. So what the FAFSA is for the federal aid. If a school asks for CSS profile, they're using that information for their institutional aid. And they're wanting additional information beyond what's on the FAFSA to determine who's going to get those institutional dollars. So you may see questions on the profile that you did not see on the FAFSA, and questions about some of the assets that are excluded on the FAFSA. They may ask for information from the non-custodial, I guess it's still the non-custodial parent, the other parent in divorce and separated situations, still trying to get all of this terminology down. So just be prepared that if you're looking at schools that are asking for this, again, getting it in by any deadline that is offered, and realize it serves a different purpose from the FAFSA and collects potentially different information as well. How do you find out how much aid your student might receive? That's through the financial aid award offer. You would have to, in order to receive the financial aid award offer, one that would include federal aid, you would have to have listed that school on the FAFSA. So we've received your FAFSA and you're admitted to our institution. So generally when we have both of those pieces coming together, we can put together a financial aid award offer that's including all the types of aid that the student's eligible for the upcoming school year. Really, your financial aid award offer is pulling together the institutional sources for aid, federal aid, for a school that's in New Jersey, if there's New Jersey state aid eligibility, pulling that in there. So all the sources together in one place. You may be asked to provide additional documentation to, it could be to the college, it also could be to the state of New Jersey. Both the federal government and the state government have a verification process. They want to make sure that what you put on the FAFSA is correct. So even with the changes to the FAFSA, they're telling us they're still going to be selecting people for verification. So just keep in mind that you may be asked for additional information, and just make sure that you're submitting it to whoever asked for it as soon as you possibly can. And then finally, if you decide to use student loans, the school will walk you through that process. Okay. Now, we realize that you are using income information from 2 years prior, and life has gone on since then, and things may have changed. So you won't be able to change any of that income information through that data exchange. It's going to automatically put that 2022 information in there. So if there's going to be anything to change, it will be done through the college or university. We have what we call a professional judgment process where we can address changes in circumstances. So if there's been something like a job loss since you completed the FAFSA, the unemployment benefits maybe have ended, you were just receiving them, if there's been a reduction in other types of income, unreimbursed medical expenses. This is not an exhaustive list, just giving you an idea of the types of things that can be considered. You'll address that with the college that your student plans to attend. Please don't try to make changes to the FAFSA. That has to be done at the college level. To warn you, or to just prepare you, not so much warn you, if you're going to be requesting a review of your circumstances, the college is going to need to document it. So please be prepared to submit documentation. Giving us an explanation of what happened with dates. And, I lost my job on X date. I started collecting unemployment on this date. It was this much per week. It ended on this date. Those are the kinds of things that we need to know. And then, depending upon the particular situation, if it is a job loss and you're collecting unemployment, we need a copy of the unemployment stub. Have you returned to work? Oh, yes. Okay. Give us a pay stub from the new job. So we need to be able to document everything that we're doing. So just know, and the documentation can be different depending upon the situation, but just know that we do need that information. Okay, we don't want to forget about any sources of aid. So we do want to make sure that we're covering all of our sources for aid. So we don't want to forget the college or university, institutional is what I have on the slide, offers aid. They may have aid that's merit-based. They may have aid that's need-based. They may have some of both. What is the difference? Merit-based aid is aid that's based on prior academics. It could be grades. It could be test scores. It's something, as it states, merit. Nothing to do with financial information. Need-based aid, just like we talked about with federal aid being for need and calculating need, need-based aid would be aid that's based on income information, but it's just coming from the college instead of the federal government. So if you're researching colleges, you can take a look at their financial aid websites. They should all be able to tell you the types of aid that they offer so that you know what school has what's a possibility at each of the institutions your student is looking for. Federal aid, you take care of all the federal sources by completing the FAFSA. Also, the information within the FAFSA will automatically go to the state of New Jersey to determine state aid eligibility. So you don't have to worry about any separate state forms if your student is looking to remain in New Jersey for college. And then don't forget about other sources of aid. If your student's an athlete and maybe they're going to a school that offers athletic scholarships, that may be a possibility. There are also outside scholarships. I have another slide on those, so we'll talk more in depth on those in a minute. Veterans benefits. If I have any veterans in the audience, you may be able to transfer your eligibility to your student. Resident assistantships. This is a way for students who are living on campus, not generally in their first year, but in subsequent years, to be basically a leader in a residence hall and live on the floor and be a resource to students. And generally being a resident assistant carries some financial benefits to it. There are also tax credits for higher education. If you're interested in finding out what may be available, certainly talk to your tax professional, but also you can take a look at IRS Publication 970. So IRS Publication 970 has everything about all of the opportunities related to higher education and taxes. It's really not a bad read, so give you an idea of what you might qualify for down the road based on your students' expenses. So let's check out the next slide. So yes, I said I would give you some more information about outside scholarships. What are outside scholarships? These are scholarships from sources outside of a college or university. So be thinking companies, foundations, clubs, religious organizations, on the local level, thinking about Rotary clubs and your PTA boosters and the band boosters and maybe local companies in your town and things like that. And I'm sure that your counseling office can give you the best information about the scholarships that are available locally and the process. But you also want to get a more global reach, and you can use the web to do that. I gave you some free websites here on the slide that you can use to search for outside scholarship resources. All of these are free. Some may give you some advertising, but ultimately they are free to use. Generally, with a site like FastWeb, and I believe like with MyScholarly, those are sites where you're entering a profile of yourself, and it takes that profile and matches it to the database of scholarships that it has, and then returns to the student what they may qualify for. So it's not getting the student a scholarship, but it's cutting down on the research time. So those of us that were around before the internet, when you wanted to search for college scholarships, you'd have to go to the library and you'd have to get a book that was literally like 1,000 pages long and sit there and go through all the descriptions. That's what this cuts down on. And this way you can focus your time on those awards that you might actually qualify for. Everything that I gave you here is all legitimate. So please, feel free to take a look. Don't wait until August. It will be too late. It's good to get in, especially a site like FastWeb, to get your profile done now so that you can be on the ramp up of scholarships opening for next school year. Usually starting, and there's some that are open now and will be as we progress into the fall and into the winter. But when the new year starts, that's when there's an explosion of outside scholarships that become available. And then usually in the spring, April, May, big months for deadlines, because you also have to give these organizations time to review the applicants, make their decision, and then funding happens in the summer. So that's why I say you can't wait until August to search for this. It's a much longer process. And then don't stop. Once you're out of high school, then you want to keep up on your profiles on the sites, because then things change. Now you're not a high school senior, you're a college freshman. Oh, here I have a major now. Here's my college GPA. I joined this organization, and that could potentially change the scholarships that you might qualify for. So it's not something just to do when you're a high school senior. You can continue to do that as you're in college as well. All righty, let's move on. Okay. So you want to be sure that you understand the types of financial aid you might be receiving. When you receive all of those financial aid offers, let's say you maxed out that FAFSA, you applied to 20 colleges. You put all 20 on there, and guess what? You got admitted to all 20 of them. So that also means you're going to get 20 financial aid offers to review. So when you sit down to review them, you want to understand what's on there. So when you see something that says grant on the end of it, that is free money. It does not have to be repaid, generally awarded on the basis of financial need, not always, but in general. So again, grants, free money, we like those. You may also see federal work study. The slide shows that it's earned money. Yes, it is, because you're going to work at an on-campus or community service related job while you're in school and earn money. The college may or may not, it may go directly toward your tuition. You may get that money in pocket. That is something to ask the individual college. But if you see federal work study on your award letter, that means you have eligibility. It is a need-based program, so you do have to have financial need, and the FAFSA is the application. We also have loans. Anything that says loan on the end of it is money that you're borrowing and will ultimately have to be repaid. And then finally, we have on that list scholarships. This slide says that scholarships are earned money. Why is that? Well, because with a scholarship, you've done some sort of work. You've gotten good grades. You've gotten good test scores. You have a particular talent that you have worked on or some other unique characteristic. So yes, it may be earned money in that sense, but also it does not have to be repaid. So grants and scholarships do not have to be repaid. You don't have to repay federal work study if you do use it. Loans, yes, borrowed and have to be repaid. Okay, so let's see. In the chat, before we started, I put a link to the resource page through studentaid.gov. This is a great website. They have just started to update brochures and things that they have on there for 24-25. There is a booklet. Sorry, I have it right over here. Do you need money for college or career trade school? They have updated that for 24-25, so you can view that on that site. It's a great overview of everything. Tells you what to do to get started, tells you what happens after you complete the FAFSA, and gives you an overview of all the federal aid programs. So it will include information about the federal Pell Grant, which is the federal government's main grant program. Grant does not have to be repaid. Pell is available to both full and part-time students, and it is a need-based grant, so you do have to have financial need. Currently, the maximum is $7,395 per year. Do not have the maximum yet for next school year. FSEOG stands for the Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant. This grant is generally awarded to students who are also receiving the federal Pell Grant. The difference is that the FSEOG is limited in funding. Schools that participate in the program, we have a limited amount to spend. And so once we've spent it, once it's gone, it's gone. That's why you might see priority deadlines with completing the FAFSA, because for funds that are going to run out, you want to make sure you're in at the earliest deadline. FSEOG can be awarded up to $4,000 a year, but that's at the discretion of the colleges and universities. Teach Grant is a grant for students interested in teaching. You need to be interested in teaching in certain high-need subject areas in low-income districts. Award is up to $4,000 a year, but also has a teaching component that's required after the student graduates, and they have to meet that or it will revert to a loan. So lots of ins and outs with Teach Grant. So I do recommend that students who are interested in the potential subject areas, districts, that they read there's all the information you could possibly need on studentaid.gov. It'll give you links to the high need subject areas based on states, the low income districts for each state, so you can make a decision if that's an award that you'd like to receive. I also put another link in the chat for state aid resources. I also did give you the main website on here. It's HESAA.org. That stands for Higher Education Student Assistance Authority. That is the part of New Jersey government that manages all of the higher education aid programs. The state's main grant program is the Tuition Aid Grant, or TAG program. It is a need-based grant program for New Jersey residents that remain in New Jersey. EOF is the Educational Opportunity Fund program for both academically and financially disadvantaged students. NJ STARS allows students in the top 15% of their class to go to their local community college with required tuition and required fees paid for. There is a part 2 to NJ STARS. Have to be NJ STARS 1. So if this is something your student is considering, they do need to go through the first part at the community college, successfully meet all their requirements when they complete that program to move into NJ STARS 2. NJ STARS 2 can be used at any of the 4-year institutions in New Jersey, and it's up to a $2,500 a year scholarship. So really that's a merit-based program from the state of New Jersey. Then we also have an income-based program, the Community College Opportunity Grant. So that's at the community college level, and then the Garden State Guarantee. Both of those are at public institutions. Obviously, all the community colleges are public, but the Garden State Guarantee is only at the four-year public institutions. What does it do? There are income cutoffs. If you fall below the income ranges, these awards will come in and pick up basically the rest of the tuition. So you can use it first at the community college level, and then Garden State Guarantee for the third and fourth years at a public institution. If any of those awards are of interest to your student, I highly recommend going to HESA.org. They have all of the information. They even have like handouts that you can print out with all the ins and outs to each of those programs for you to determine whether or not you might qualify and if it's something that your student wants to do. Okay. I do want to talk a couple minutes about loans, because if you have exhausted all of your scholarship and grant resources, but you still need more funding, well, you can take a look at the loan options. The Federal Direct Loan Program is a loan program for students. A student borrows the loan, no cosigner, no credit check involved, but there are limits to how much a student can borrow each year. In their first year, it's $5,500. It does go up each year, but that is the maximum for their first year. If you then maximize the federal direct loan and you still need more, you have options in the Federal Parent Plus loan, a loan from the federal government, credit-based for parents. A parent is the borrower and the parent is the one responsible for repayment. Then there are also private education loans offered by various banks, lenders, cosigners that can be used. They're all education-related loans that can be used for any balance due on tuition, fees, room, meals. If you want to borrow extra money, you can through Parent Plus or private education loan for those extra items in the cost of attendance. So books, transportation expenses, miscellaneous expenses. You can borrow beyond what is billed through a Parent Plus private loan if you feel that that's what's needed for, for your family and your circumstances. Okay, so some last tips that I'm going to leave you with. If you can just click through, because that would be great. I always tell everybody every year to read everything, but it's even more important going into 24-25. For those people that have completed the FAFSA before, you want to make sure you're reading everything, because it's not all going to be exactly the same and what you were used to. And then for people that are just starting, obviously you're just starting this process, you want to read everything to make sure that you have a correct application in whatever it is that you're doing right from the start. Make sure that you keep up on all mail and email from colleges. I realize it's a lot, but always just make sure there's no action that's needed on anything, because you don't want to miss out on an opportunity because you didn't see that there was maybe a deadline, or you let the email sit for a little too long. Just make sure you're checking for any action, as soon as possible. Yes, instructions, please read them carefully, especially, again, going into this year. So we make sure that, people have correct applications right from the start. Review before you submit. You'll have that opportunity. Again, we talked about it, even the FAFSA submission summary, that you can, again, go over all the information, and then always keep copies of everything for your purposes moving forward. Yes, involve the student in this process. It is a lot easier when the student is involved in the process. Parents, you have to understand that all of these financial aid processes are student-centered, and the aid belongs to the student. Unless you're borrowing a Parent Plus loan, that's yours. But the rest of the aid belongs to the student. That's why even with the FAFSA, yes, parents can complete it, but it's really set up for the student to initiate it. I can tell you we have processes here for the students selected for verification. Even the way the state of New Jersey runs verification, it's student initiated. So when you can have that mindset, it will help reduce of things being submitted incorrectly, or you can't log in and it's because you're using the wrong login or something like that. And also, when the students are here, when they come to our campus, they're here. So we're reaching out to them. And also our the way to communicate is different from what you're used to in high school. There's privacy law that kicks in once they're enrolled in college, and you can't just call me and ask me for certain information unless the student has released that information to you. I am not trying to be a pain in the butt to you that day. It's just that we have to follow the law. So I know you're used to being able to call teachers, counselors, things like that. That relationship does change once the student is in college. We do have ways for students to waive those privacy rights. All colleges do. As long as they complete that process, then it's not a problem. And also, when you have questions, talk to the financial aid office. Certainly tonight, I'm happy to help you all with any general questions that you have, but if it is something very specific to a particular college or how the college might handle your particular situation, you do want to talk to the financial aid office at that institution. This is what we do day in and day out. We know how our school works, what you might need to submit to us. So don't be afraid to reach out to the financial aid office at a particular college or university. And yay, you all made it to the end. Congratulations. And thank you for staying all the way to the end. I did not get to look, but did we? Nobody has any other questions.
No, I was monitoring that, Kristen,
Okay.
as you were speaking to see if anybody put in any questions, but I certainly will present that again and offer that opportunity for any of you out there that are listening to this presentation. If you do have any questions, specifically regarding the funding process for college, please feel free now to jot down your question in the chat. And we are more than happy to read off the question and gain some answer from it if we can. If not, we will certainly gather that information and be able to offer you that information as well. So let's say we have somebody who raised a hand. Let's see.
Oh.
We have hands raised, but we're not going to be unmuting anybody tonight. So if you would please just go ahead over to the chat where it looks like a little comment button on the far right side. And you can open that up and you can go ahead and it will say in call messages, and you can go ahead and type a message in there and hit that arrow button to ask any questions. Kristen, we thank you so much this evening for presenting with us all of that information, especially about the changes with respect to the new FAFSA that's coming out. And I know that's had a lot of families feel apprehensive, but we're kind of all in the same boat together. So we encourage all of you to go to the page for studentaid.gov account. And for those of you that are able to access the Chatham High School website, underneath the counseling tab, and then within the college and career page, you will then see links on the right-hand side, one of which says college funding. If you click there, you will see some updated information, one of which is a FAFSA tab, which you will then be able to go to, and it will take you directly to the studentaid.gov page in order to fill out the FAFSA when it does become available in December. You can also go through and just create your account right now if you wish to do so before the FAFSA is available, so that, as Kristen said, they can kind of identify you and make sure everything's accurate with your social security number, all of that good stuff. and then we can kind of move forward from there. But we will have this presentation loaded up for you on the website for you to view in future format if you prefer. And we do have some links available to you on the website underneath the college funding section, some quick videos directly from the studentaid.gov site, letting you know what is the FAFSA, very quick views, videos, 3 minutes at the most, also the changes that are coming through with the FAFSA. So all, again, additional supplemental information to what Kristen has just explained to us this evening, so that you'll be able to see that information as well available to you.
So yeah, I was going to even tell everyone, I don't know if you're not seeing, I know on my computer in the bottom right corner, there's something that looks like to write a text message, like the icon on my phone. That's where we can take the questions. It's also where I put the 2 links to the resource page with federal student aid. That's where you can find the booklet that I was talking about, the Do You Need Money for College. Also, one of the items that they updated on that page has to do with the changes to the divorce separated parents. So there is a nice handout with a lot of, okay, if this, then that, if this, then that, so that you can be sure that you have the right parent or parents for completing the FAFSA.
Yeah, I know a few of you, just to emphasize, a few of you have raised your hands. Again, we are not opening up the microphones for speaking at this time because this is a recorded session. However, please go ahead and put your message in the chat if you do have one, and we're happy to answer them. Well, at this time, it doesn't seem that anybody has a direct question. Certainly, those of you at the high school, you know how to reach out. If you think of any questions this evening after this presentation, certainly feel free to reach out to me at the high school, and I'd be happy to answer your question or direct you to the resource that's appropriate. And with that, at this point, I guess we will close out the session for this evening. Again, we want to thank Ms. Kristen Isaacson for joining us here at Chatham High School for our college funding night. Again, the Associate Director of Financial Aid at Monmouth University. So thank you again so very much for all of your information that you've provided this evening. It really has helped to help move these families just one step closer to that process of the college funding process and the college search and off to school process, all of it together. So we thank you so very much for your time this evening, and all of the Chatham families that are out there that joined us this evening. We thank you for joining in, and all the students that joined, we thank you. And again, we want to thank Ms. Kristen Isaacson for your time.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. At this point, we are closing out the session. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.